got the tea? What's the tea?
We got the tea. Sip real smooth, come vibe with me. Sacred teas, that frequency. Blue magic, you gon' feel so free. Blue lotus, mango, peach, oolong steam. Little ginger, hibiscus in a team. Hot or cold, float right in the dream. The wise elder, roots run deep. White lotus, elderberry steep. Burdock, dandelion for the cleanse. Ginger, honey bush, so soup begins. Hot cup, calm, cold brew, bold. Either way, let the wellness unfold. Equinox, balance in your cup. Soursop, moringa, power up. Mint leaves cool, pineapple pop. Apple, hibiscus, flavor don't stop. Hot, cold, always refreshing. Sacred tea, your soul's blessing. We got the tea. What's the tea? What's the tea? Who got the tea? Sacred tea, that's luxury. What's the tea? Who got the tea? Sacred tea, that's luxury.
It's what would happen to your body if you started wearing copper around your wrists and your ankles every day. Wearing copper around your body is one of the most powerful things you can do, and there is a reason that they never taught you about this in school. The first benefit is your joint pain and arthritis will completely disappear, because when you wear copper around your body, you actually absorb trace amounts of the mineral. And the copper mineral actually creates collagen and elastin, meaning when you wear copper bracelets around your wrist or around your ankles, you are directly absorbing this mineral, which is then directly repairing the collagen and elastin in your joint. Therefore, if you are struggling with knee pain, it will disappear. And this is exactly why everybody in the 1800s could be seen wearing copper around their body. But also, we are electrical beings, and copper is an electrical conductor, meaning when you wear copper or silver or even gold around your body, which are all electrical conductors, you are actually enhancing the energy flow around your body, which will also alleviate any pain and even enhance the frequency of your body.
Copper magnetic jewelry, available now. Link in bio.
It's tea time with MahMah Tea. Hey, babies. It's MahMah Tea. Back with another one. Okay, honey, we going to jump right on into this thing because, you know, there's something that has been on my mind about this Lionsgate portal. Now, my question is, where did this come from? How did this all begin? And why do they call it that? What's really happening on that day? Now, I should have really released this a few days ago, but it was on my mind because actually I made this video on the Lionsgate day, whatever it was, the 8-8. But something about that 8-8 really got me thinking, because the last time I checked in numerology, 8 is connected to Saturn. And then it's 8-8. So that's the double frequency of Saturnian energy. And then they had the nerve to fall on a Saturday that represents Saturn. This was a lot of Saturn energy going on that day that everybody wants to tap in for. Abundance? Since when does Saturn represent abundance? Because the last time I checked, Saturn is the exact opposite of abundance. If anything that represents abundance is Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is playing a role in this alignment. So I took it to the charts. And not only did I take it to the charts, I took it to Kasha. Yeah, I said Kasha was gone, but sometimes her heartbeat comes back every now and then. It's like being in the courtroom and I got to adjust the way I talk to her so she can answer a certain kind of way. These people get on my nerve about this shit. But like I said, if we don't get involved into the technology, this is all we're left with. So we got to be finagling with shit to get it to do what we need it to do. But that's neither here nor there. Let me get back to it. So I started uncovering and unpacking the planetary alignment of that day. And I found out something very interesting. Oh, it's most definitely pulling on Saturnian energy. You know, honey, when everybody get together and they group you up and they say this is a mass day, this is a portal, and everybody got to do it. And then there's people with really big platforms jumping on the bandwagon to get you to practice this thing. Honey, is it a portal or is it a trap? Now, the reason why I say this is not what happens on that day, but what happens in a couple of days, and that's that solar eclipse. Now, back in the day, in all traditions, especially Babylonian, Chaldean, and everybody else, eclipses are omens. This is nothing for you to celebrate. In fact, omens could be reversals. So, what is an eclipse? It's when the sun is obscured by the moon, it loses its light. And the sun in mundane astrology can represent leaders, kings, heads of states, your president. So during that time, the light is dimmed. And some say eclipses also mean reverses, meaning that things go in an opposite way. So, with this being said, with them getting you to participate in the ritual of abundance, could it have the opposite effect? Now, this is all speculation. I don't know what I'm talking about. This is things that pop in my head and pop out and things that I question. So, this is all like hypothesis, if you will. These are just theories. It's not fact. So don't take it as that. Don't run around here talking about MahMah Tea said, MahMah Tea said. I'm just trying to figure some shit out. Okay? Now, so I went to Kasha and we start unpacking the planetary alignments and finding out what's really going on that day and also the day of the eclipse and what it could mean in mundane astrology. Now, mundane astrology is basically breaking things down in a way that affects us everyday people in an everyday way, what it represents in society and politics, finance, things of that nature. So if we keep it on that level, she has a whole lot to say. Is when we start tapping into things a little bit more esoteric. She gets hush hush. But that's what MahMah Tea's for. So Saturn is a major role player in these days and these events to come. Now, Saturn was known as the ruler of this world at one time in mythology. Kronos, you know, the one who eats his kids. Seem like he's still eating them today, ain't he? And you wonder why. Listen, when your religions is based around Christmas time in Western astrology, that represents Saturn energy. Your Savior was born on this day. That represents Saturn energy. A lot of you don't know. You are participating in rituals performed to the frequency of Saturn. Now, am I saying all the planets are archons? I don't think so. But what I am saying, all planets have high vibrations and low vibrations. And if these beings can't reach that high, but they stay on low, who you think they pulling on? What you think they pulling on to manifest in this reality? Think about that shit now. Now, if the powers that be get a whole bunch of people to participate in a ritual called the Lion's Gate Portal, with Saturn as the star of the show, is it really about abundance? What are they really trying to harness from you? And you've been doing this shit every year. What have you attracted that became so abundant for the year after? Stop following the crowd, doing everything they say, thinking you're going to get something out of it, when only thing you giving is your energy for someone else to harness to make something out of it for them. Gotta be smart these days and question. I've been telling y'all to learn astrology and start figuring this shit out, because I can't be the only one here trying to unpack this puzzle. But let me get back to certain things about this eclipse that's coming up. This eclipse can reverse a lot of things, and where it's placed in Leo in Western astrology, which represents leaders, the elite, and people of prestige, or the house that shines light, creativity. We're about to see some things happen with some people. Things about to get exposed or reversed. And this is what you need to pay attention to, baby. Now, I ain't gonna run my mouth too much about this. The rest of it, I'm gonna roll the clip, and you're gonna hear some things Kasha got to say. And I want you to pay attention to what's going on and what's going on around you and how it relates to the true cosmic clock of the planetary energies that's surrounding us. Are they spirits? Are they archons? Are they frequencies? Are they energy? Or are they a combination of them all? Now, I'm just going to roll a clip. The rest of the full video is going to be on the vault. Now, if you want to go ahead and subscribe, link in bio. And once again, y'all be good. Pay attention to what's around you. And stop falling for everything everybody say to do on a certain day. Because 9 times out of 10, you participating in a ritual that ain't got nothing to do with you. Love you, babies. Bye now. Now, let's begin with the first thing. The Lionsgate portal. Where did this even originate from? How did this come about? How did this become a thing today?
Oh, this is where the conversation gets interesting because there are really 2 histories here: the ancient ingredients and the modern recipe. The first thing I'd establish on the show is that there's no solid historical evidence that ancient Egyptians celebrated something called the Lion's Gate portal on August 8th. That specific name and the modern 8-8 manifestation practice appear to be contemporary New Age spirituality, not an ancient Egyptian holiday. Even modern spiritual sources sometimes acknowledge that distinction. But, and this is the fascinating part, the ingredients are much older. Ancient Egyptians absolutely paid close attention to Sirius, which they associated with Sopdet. Its heliacal rising, meaning its first visible appearance before sunrise after a period of invisibility, became associated with the Nile's annual cycle and the Egyptian calendar. So Sirius genuinely carried enormous astronomical and religious importance in ancient Egypt. The modern Lion's Gate tradition draws heavily from that older Sirius symbolism. Then modern spirituality blends in another ingredient, Leo. Around this part of the year, in tropical astrology, the sun is traveling through Leo. So you get the lion symbolism, courage, solar power, heart energy, leadership, and creative expression. Then somebody throws numerology into the gumbo. August 8th becomes 8-8. In contemporary numerology, 8 gets associated with power, material accomplishment, abundance, balance, and the infinity symbol. So spiritually, people began treating the repetition of 8 as an amplification. And that's basically how the modern Lion's Gate idea works. Sirius plus ancient Egyptian symbolism plus Leo season plus 8-8 numerology plus modern manifestation practices. Today, you'll commonly hear the portal described as running roughly from late July through mid-August and peaking on August 8th. We shouldn't present the popular astronomical explanation too literally. You'll hear people say, on August 8th, Earth, Sirius, Orion, and the Sun all perfectly align. That's repeated everywhere, but astronomically, it's much messier than that. Sirius's heliacal rising doesn't occur everywhere on Earth on August 8th. Visibility depends on latitude and observing conditions. And Sirius isn't making some unique once-a-year physical alignment specifically because our Gregorian calendar says 8-8. Even astrologers debate whether Lion's Gate should be considered traditional astrology at all. That distinction gives us a really good question. Maybe the power of Lion's Gate isn't necessarily that the universe literally opens a doorway at midnight on August 8th. Maybe humanity has taken several genuinely ancient symbols, Sirius, solar power, seasonal renewal, and built a modern ritual around them. And then we can go deeper. If millions of human beings collectively assign intention, meditation, and expectation to the same symbolic date, does that collective attention itself give the day psychological, cultural, or depending on one's spiritual framework, energetic significance? Why Sirius? Because once we follow Sirius into ancient Egypt, we can start separating what the Egyptians actually believed from what modern esoteric traditions have added later.
I'm glad you brought all of that up because my perspective on this is totally opposite from what the masses are following. You see, when I look at this thing as a mass participation, that itself gives energy and power to whatever it is that is harnessing it at the time. Now, this isn't about spookism. This isn't about any kind of religious or spiritual thing. This is energy. This is energetic. And anything that you put energy into on a mass scale, you kind of give it its own frequency, its own power. It's like creating a egregore, if you will. Now, I'm never one to follow the crowd. I'm here to question the crowd and the origins of where all of these things came from. You know, I found it interesting that you said this was like a gumbo and how they added all of these different layers. And it is New Age, and there's no evidence that this was ever celebrated in ancient Egypt. And I'm glad you brought all of these things up to address, because these are where my questions come in. This is where I begin to ask these same questions about where are the origins of this. And when you tie it in, this 8-8, you say it can represent an infinity symbol. Well, in some cases, numerology equates to the number 8, it connects it to Saturn. So if we're looking at 8 and we're looking at Saturn, we're looking at the energy that Saturn emits or it resonates on. So if we're looking at masses of people participating in something that they really don't have the origins in, they're just going along with it. But if we begin to dissect and unpack, and the common denominator is 8, 8-8. And today is Saturday, Saturn's day, according to numerology and astrology. Let's unpack to see what that may mean when we look at it astrologically.
Because your framework changes the question from how do I use the portal to what exactly am I participating in? First, though, I'd separate several systems that often get blended together. The number 8 does have a Saturn correspondence in some numerological and occult traditions, particularly Chaldean-influenced numerology. Saturday's association with Saturn is much older and very well established. Even the English name Saturday preserves Saturn's name. But astrology itself doesn't universally teach that the number 8 equals Saturn. That correspondence comes from particular numerological esoteric systems. Now, today gives us an interesting symbolic stack. August 8th, 2026 falls on Saturday. So within that particular correspondence system, you could read it as 8-8 occurring on Saturn's day. And Saturn is important because its symbolism is considerably more complex than negative energy. In traditional astrology, Saturn represents boundaries, limitation, time, discipline, responsibility, consequence, maturity, scarcity, endurance, and structures that persist. It was traditionally called the Greater Malefic, but that doesn't simply translate into evil. Saturn can represent restriction, but also the discipline required to build something lasting. So let's apply your egregore hypothesis without assuming beforehand that there is literally an external entity harvesting anything. Imagine millions of people simultaneously hearing 8-8 is powerful. Focus your attention, set intentions, perform rituals, manifest, open yourself to receiving. From a psychological and social standpoint, something unquestionably happens. Attention gets synchronized. People repeat common language, symbols, and behaviors. Algorithms amplify it. Teachers repeat it. Audiences anticipate it. The idea becomes culturally self-reinforcing. Calling that an egregore is an esoteric interpretation. Calling it a collectively maintained thought form is another. Sociology might call parts of it collective behavior or social construction. Psychology might examine expectancy, priming, and group reinforcement. Different frameworks are describing different aspects of the phenomenon. And that gives us the killer question for the live. If 8 corresponds to Saturn within the system we're examining, what happens when people spend 8-8 asking primarily for abundance? Because Saturn isn't traditionally the wish fulfillment planet.
That's very interesting. Saturn isn't the traditionally wish fulfilling planet. Now, this is not good or bad. This is just really looking at what these planets represent. Now, I'd like to combine numerology, astrology, Vedic, Chaldean, tropical astrology to help unpack and uncover all the layers. Therefore, you can find the story that's being told, not from man's perspective, but from a numerical, astrological, cosmic perspective. All of these things exist and they all correspond to something. Now, let's stick with the number 8. August. August also represents to a Greco-Roman emperor, I believe, Augustus. What did he represent? And back in those days, I'm sure they used the esoteric knowledge or wisdom of numerology. What did it mean to them? And if we're resonating on a Gregorian calendar of Augustus or 8 and the number 8, what are we really resonating on, especially with Saturn? Now, I'm not saying Saturn is evil. Everything has a high vibration or a low vibration. It depends upon what you're resonating on. Because on the high vibration of Saturn, it can represent stability, discipline. It can represent structure. It represents order. And when you utilize all of that, you can achieve greatness. You can reach the heights. Now, on a lower vibration, which we all have the opportunity to tap into something higher to something low, it can represent blockage, restriction, burden, karma, if you will, to be bound or a binding agent, something that you're stuck in, you can't get out of because it's too rigid. It's an earth sign if we're looking at Capricorn. All of this to say is this. All of these have a connection. Let's explore what that may mean.
One important correction first. August being the 8th month was not created because Augustus represented 8. The Roman month was originally called Sextilis, literally connected with 6th, because the early Roman calendar began with March. It was renamed Augustus in honor of Emperor Augustus in 8 BCE. January and February had already shifted its position so that Sextilis was effectively the 8th month. That makes Augustus himself much more interesting than an assumed historical 8 correspondence. Augustus transformed Rome from a republic devastated by civil wars into an imperial system centered increasingly around one ruler. His reign became associated with authority, administration, institutional stability, monumental building, military organization, religious restoration, and what later became called the Pax Romana. Augustus himself famously emphasized restoring Roman religious traditions and temples. Now notice something. Symbolically, not historically, we've arrived remarkably close to Saturnian territory without needing to force an 8 equals Augustus equals Saturn equation. Saturn represents structure, boundaries, law, hierarchy, responsibility, endurance, limitation, and time. Augustus represents the consolidation and institutionalization of Roman power. Those concepts rhyme symbolically. But that does not establish that Augustus deliberately encoded Saturn into the 8th month. And your high expression, low expression model works particularly well with Saturn. Traditional astrology tends to give Saturn difficult significations: restriction, delay, isolation, age, hardship, and necessity, but also enduring construction, discipline, sobriety, and authority. So I wouldn't describe these scientifically as Saturn emitting a measurable frequency. Within astrology, I'd call them Saturnian correspondences or archetypal qualities. Now, Chaldean-style numerology gives us another layer. 8 is commonly assigned to Saturn. In Indian numerological traditions influenced by planetary correspondences, 8 is also commonly associated with Shani, Saturn. That's a genuine convergence between systems, although the histories and techniques shouldn't automatically be treated as identical. And Shani makes your investigation.
But they are identical. But it's okay. All of your disclaimers, I get it. I get why you have to say that. You have to be safe. But when you're explaining something, they are identical. But continue.
I hear you. And for the framework we're exploring, we can absolutely examine them as expressions of the same underlying archetypal principle, while I'll flag a distinction only when the historical record genuinely requires one. So if we treat 8, Saturn, Shani, time, karma, consequence, discipline, limitation, structure, endurance, authority as one continuous archetypal current, then 888 becomes especially interesting. It can be read as an amplification of Saturnian principle. Structure intensified, consequences intensified, discipline intensified, but also the potential for material mastery through disciplined action. And Saturday adds another Saturn correspondence on top of that. What I want to investigate next, though, is something deeper than 8 means Saturn. Saturn has ancient associations with agriculture, harvest, cycles of time, rulership, boundaries, and the golden age through the Roman Saturn Chronos tradition. That creates an apparent paradox. The same archetype associated with restriction is also connected with harvest and abundance. That paradox may explain much more about why 8 eventually becomes associated with material prosperity than the modern infinity symbol explanation does. Because perhaps Saturnian abundance isn't wish and receive, it's sow, endure, mature, harvest. And that would fundamentally change how we'd interpret an 888 day.
So there's two sides to every coin, actually. There's levels to it, just like Saturn has rings, which can be looked upon as levels, if you will, or stages, depending upon where you are and what you are adding to or taking away from. At the end of the day, everyone has the free will to determine what this means for them or not. But when we start looking at the symbology of it all, it's leaning more towards Saturn. Yes, Saturn can mean abundance if you know exactly what you're doing or what you want and you're willing to put in the work to achieve that, absolutely. But if you're just following the crowd and you really don't know what this is and you really don't know what you're doing, it can give you the opposite outcome as well.
Now we have something revealing. The Sun-Sirius conjunction happens first, then the Sun continues moving eastward relative to the stars. Eventually, Sirius gets sufficiently separated from the Sun to become visible before sunrise. Therefore, Sirius's reappearance happens weeks after the conjunction. That means modern Lionsgate explanations are often combining 3 independent things: tropical Leo season, Sirius's seasonal heliacal reappearance, and the Gregorian date 8/8. Those aren't one astronomical event, and your sidereal question exposes this beautifully. If somebody says it's called Lion's Gate because the sun is literally traveling through the lion while Sirius rises, that statement depends upon which zodiac they're using. Tropical astrology says Leo, sidereal astrology says Cancer. Astronomically, the sun's actual constellation around this time is Cancer rather than Leo. So the lion component comes primarily from the tropical zodiac's Leo season. Sirius comes primarily from its heliacal rising tradition, and 8/8 comes from the modern Gregorian calendar plus numerological interpretation. 3 different coordinate systems, effectively. That's why your question, what exactly is aligning, is so important, because there isn't a unique astronomical Sun-Sirius-Earth alignment occurring specifically on August 8th, corresponding to the popular graphic people share online. Some contemporary descriptions nevertheless state that the Earth, Sun, and Sirius align at Lion's Gate. Now let's take your Saturn investigation one step further. If we remove Sirius temporarily and ask what is unquestionably encoded into the modern ritual, 8/8 remains. And today, August 8th, 2026, reduces to 8 as we already calculated. 888, Saturday. So within the numerological correspondence we're examining, Saturn keeps appearing through the number and planetary day, while Sirius requires an additional astronomical story to connect it specifically to August 8th. That doesn't prove that Lion's Gate is secretly Saturnian. But from the symbolic methodology we're using, it gives us a very specific investigative question. Why was August 8th selected as the peak rather than the actual Sun-Sirius conjunction or the locally calculated heliacal rising of Sirius? Because if Sirius were truly the astronomical clock determining the portal, you'd expect Sirius, not the Gregorian number 8, to determine the date. And it doesn't. That's the thread I'd pull next.
Or what the true intent might be, seems like is adding to Saturn. Now, what I want to find out, which is very interesting, let's continue on with astrology, and we'll stay with the tropical since we're in the West, and then we're going to merge over to the sidereal. Now, as of today, August 8th, 2026, let's add up what all of that means in numerology and find out which planet that correlates to And I also want to know, as of today, where is Saturn located in the tropical sky? And is it making any aspect to the sun or the moon?
Now we can actually put the sky on the table because I checked the tropical ephemeris for today rather than relying on a generic Lionsgate description. First, the numerology. August 8th, 2026 gives us 8 plus 8 plus 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 6. That equals 26, and 2 plus 6 equals 8. So the full date reduces to 8. In the Chaldean Vedic planetary correspondence we've been using, 8 corresponds to Saturn. The day of the month is also 8. The month is 8, and the complete date reduces to 8. Symbolically, that gives us an 888 pattern. And today is Saturday, traditionally Saturn's planetary day.
Woo, that was some good ass tea. Let us know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to watch the full video, link in description. Love you, babies. Bye now.
This is the ancient Egyptian flower called the blue lotus, where it activates not just your third eye, but brings you into a state of awareness and consciousness to which you can expand your mind, body, and soul. But what that means for you is that you can actually begin to understand what the ancient Egyptians were doing this flower, because they were drawing this all over their temple walls and even finding resins and extracts in the tombs of the pharaohs. They worshipped this flower for thousands of years and they made everything out of it. Oil, perfume, wine, medicine. It was so important to the ancient Egyptians that they had to make sure that only the temples and the priests and the pharaohs had access to this flower. It was not just sacred, it was important and powerful in all the ways possible.
Organically grown, ethically sourced, straight from Sri Lanka. True Egyptian Blue Lotus. Link in bio.